All right, right now I am working on 4 different stories here. So the one that we're going to be talking about is a case out of the Fifth Circuit, and it deals with machine guns. So with that, we are going to get into it and break it all down with our special guest of the day. All right, guys, this case is out of the Fifth Circuit. It was in front of a 3-judge panel, Wiener, Willett, and Ho, and it deals with the federal ban on machine guns made after 1986. This involves a man by the name of Jamon Wilson, who is not a good guy, but you. In addition to murder charges, he used a Glock equipped with a switch, and he was hit with federal machine gun charges, which he claims was unconstitutional. Now, the Fifth Circuit, the too long didn't read is the Fifth Circuit upheld the ban on machine guns, citing other cases from the past, but they did do something that is very unusual, and they asked for an en banc. So they didn't really rule on it too much. They said, hey, case law says this, but we really think that the en banc of the Fifth Circuit needs to address this case on a Second Amendment issue, which would take into consideration Bruen.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
So we're going to go ahead and get into this. Wiener, Wallet, and Ho. Yeah, so we're going to get into this. We are. Once I get this. There we go. I don't know why it took so long. So, Rich, let's get into it.
Uh-oh. I got to clean my glasses. All right.
That is the judges' names. Yep. Wiener, Willett, and Ho.
Is this a Kamala Harris joke?
No, that's just the name of their.
Wait. Can you want me to read this part?
Yes.
After being duped into buying a fake firearm, Jamon Wilson retaliated, shooting the seller dead with a handgun modified to fire like a machine gun. Wilson later confessed and pleaded guilty to unlawful possession of a machine gun under USC blah. At sentencing, the district court applied the sentencing guidelines cross-reference to second-degree murder, concluding that offense mostly reflected Wilson's conduct. On appeal, Wilson raises 2 challenges: that his conviction violates the Second Amendment and that the district court misapplied the cross-reference in calculating his guidelines range. We reject both arguments and affirm. Okay, so basically they're supporting the lower court.
Yeah, they're upholding the conviction.
On May 9th, 2023, Wilson and two friends met DJ in a Valero gas station parking lot to purchase a firearm for $300. As they left, they discovered the firearm was fake, and angered, Wilson drew his PSA Armory dagger, pistol outfitted with a Glock switch, the device that converts a semi-automatic handgun into a fully automatic weapon, and retrieved an extended magazine capable of holding 31 rounds from his vehicle. The 3 men then walked to the rear of the station to confront DJ. After a brief exchange, Wilson fired multiple rounds, striking DJ repeatedly until he fell. Wilson and his friends then robbed DJ of the cash.
All right, we know the background. They found him in a pool of blood, and they found the Glock switch, and they charged him with having a machine gun in addition to murder. And now we're going to get into the PSR. If you don't know what a PSR is, that's a pre-sentencing report.
We know what that is.
Yeah. Well, not everyone out there does.
Yeah. Well, I'm teasing that we do. Wilson's PSR identified as applicable guidelines because the offense resulted in death. The PSR applied the cross-reference to 2A1, which governs homicide, the PSR determined that 2A1.2, second-degree murder, was the most analogous offense. Applying that cross-reference and incorporating other adjustments, the PSR calculated an offense level of 35 combined with Wilson's criminal history. This produced a guidelines range of 188 to 235 months.
Imprisonment.
Yeah, I'm just like doing the math in my head. Because 922.0 carries a statutory minimum of 10 years below the guidelines range, the PSR recommended a 120-month sentence. So only 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Wilson objected, arguing that the second-degree murder cross-reference failed to account for his self-defense claim. The district court overruled Wilson's objection, adopted the PSR's finding, and imposed a 120-month sentence.
Okay, so let's break down how a PSR works. A PSR work. It's a pre-investigation report. It's a point system, and you might be wondering why is this a second-degree murder and not first-degree murder? First-degree murder is premeditated, which means you planned it. If you get really upset at someone, pull out your gun because they sold you a fake gun, and you mag dump them. That would be second-degree murder because that wasn't premeditated. Mm-hmm. You just got pissed off and mag dumped them. So that's first-degree murder is a little bit worse in the eyes of the court. The way the pre-sentencing works is you have a point system. So first-degree murder is more points than a second-degree murder. And if you use a machine gun that is illegal under the NFA, then you actually get more points on that. It's an enhancement, right? They call it an enhancement, but it enhances your sentence to longer. So that is worth more points. So the more points you get, the longer your sentence. So the machine gun weighs into it a lot. Like, for example, CSR,
CRS firearms?
Yeah, CRS firearms.
Okay.
They did some enhancements with his pre-sentencing report because it was a machine gun. So let's keep on going.
We review preserved constitutional challenges de novo and unpreserved sentencing objections for plain error. To establish plain error, defendant must show error that is plain and that affects substantial rights. If the defendant makes that showing, we may exercise our discretion to notice a forfeited error, but only if the error seriously affects the fairness, integrity, or public reputation of judicial proceedings, meetings.
Okay, proceed. Okay, so let's just stop right here, because it would be like a serious error, like all evidence wasn't shared during discovery, or evidence was held back, or there was some type of shenanigans going on between the judge and the prosecution, or anything like that. They review the preserved constitutional de novo, which means that they're not going to really pick it up here. They want the en banc to pick it up. So keep on going.
Wilson presses two arguments on appeal. First, he argues that his conviction is unconstitutional because 922.0 violates the Second Amendment. Second, he contends that the district court erred by applying the guidelines cross-reference to second-degree murder instead of voluntary manslaughter, which produced a higher guidelines range. We take each argument in turn. We begin with Wilson's Second Amendment challenge. Section 922.0 makes it unlawful, with exceptions not relevant here, for any person to transfer or possess a machine gun. Wilson contends that this ban violates the Second Amendment's guarantee of an individual's right to keep and bear arms.
He brings, and we're going to skip this, but he brings both a facial and an as-applied challenge. Facial meaning the law itself is unconstitutional, and as applied is the law itself is unconstitutional as applied to him.
This is not an issue of first impression for us. And it says, in Hollis v. Lynch, we rejected the constitutional challenge to 922.0 and held that machine guns do not receive Second Amendment protection. And under our rule of orderliness, one panel of our court may not overturn another panel's decision. Because Wilson offers no reason to depart from that rule, Hollis remains binding precedent.
So basically, they're saying, hey, we can't overrule the Second Amendment on this because there's a previous case that already ruled this out of the Fifth Circuit. Now, if Hollis versus Lynch was not in the Fifth Circuit and out of the Ninth Circuit or Fourth Circuit, then they could do that. But they're saying since Hollis versus Lynch is out of the Fifth Circuit, which this is a Fifth Circuit court, they don't have the ability to overrule Hollis on the constitutionality of the law, and that's why they want the en banc later on.
We begin with an overview of Hollis. 8 years after the Supreme Court decided District of Columbia v. Heller, the panel in Hollis was asked to apply that landmark decision to 922.0's bans on machine gun possession. Hollis distilled 3 guiding principles from Heller. First, the Second Amendment protects only weapons that are in common use at the time. And if a weapon is dangerous and, not or, unusual, it is not in common use. Second, the court took it as a given that M16s are dangerous and unusual weapons and not protected by the Second Amendment. And third, even though today's ordinarily militia weapons far outpace those military weapons far outpace those typically kept at home for defense, that cannot change our interpretation of the right. Guided by these principles, Hollis concluded that machine guns are not in common use and thus fall outside the Second Amendment. It is emphasized that both Heller majority and dissent identified the M16 to be dangerous and unusual weapon. Although recognizing that these passages from Heller were dicta, Hollis observed that we are generally bound by Supreme Court dicta, especially when it is recent and detailed. Still, because this was ultimately dicta, Hollis undertook an independent inquiry into whether machine guns are in fact in common use, that is, whether they are dangerous and unusual.
The dicta is basically a statement and a court ruling that is not essential to the ruling, but it's like basically like a commentary on the ruling.
Hollis had little difficulty concluding that machine guns are dangerous weapons. On unusualness, it is noted the wide variety in methodical approaches that other courts use to distinguish common from uncommon. Yet under any approach, the result was the same. It does not matter which set of numbers we adopt. None of them would allow a conclusion that a machine gun is a usual weapon. Hollis pointed to the raw number pre-1986 civilian-owned machine guns, 175,977, as far below what other circuits had deemed sufficient to show common use. It distinguished that number from the 200,000 stun guns 2 justices had deemed enough to render stun guns common, noting that while stun guns were lawful in 45 states, machine guns were totally banned in 34 states and heavily restricted in the rest. Hollis also declined to perform a percentage analysis because the record contained no such data, though it observed the percentages would be quite low. Thus, irrespective of the metric used, the numbers failed to establish that machine guns are usual. Declaring that machine guns are dangerous and unusual, therefore, is not common use. Hollis concluded that they fall outside the Second Amendment.
Okay, so doesn't the Fifth Circuit have the absolute right to overturn their own previous decisions? That's why they're asking for an en banc. The en banc before it would happen.
Wilson asks us to set aside our rule of orderliness and ignore Hollis's unmistakable holdings because 175,000 is no longer a reasonable estimate of the number of machine guns in the country. He argues that according to reports from the ATF, there are roughly 740,000 registered machine guns, and when illegally owned machine guns are included, they are now likely in the millions. That argument fails on several fronts. Most straightforwardly, Wilson's numbers have no bearing on Hollis's precedential force. Our case law is clear. The rule of orderliness applies unless a previous decision is overruled expressly or implicitly by either the United States Supreme Court or by the Fifth Circuit sitting en banc.
Wait there. That's where the Fifth Circuit has the absolute right to overturn their own previous decisions. Jake says, and that's what they're explaining. It would have to be done at the en banc.
Wilson cites no authority neither in his briefs nor when directly questioned during oral argument, suggesting that we may disregard a panel decision based solely on evolving facts. If Wilson believes Hollis is factually outdated, his recourse is to seek en banc review. But even if we would revisit Hollis, Wilson's updated statistics are misleading at best. Recently published ATF data shows that the 740,000 figures includes machine guns registered to the state and local government entities, as well as to licensed dealers selling exclusively to government agencies. Those firearms are not in the hands of private citizens for the core lawful purpose of self-defense. They are possessed by the government, not possessed at home, and are primarily for law enforcement purposes, not personal self-defense. Firearms held by the police and military entities are irrelevant to the common use inquiry. Fortunately, the ATF data provides more telling figure about 234,718 machine guns registered and transferable to a private individual or between private individuals. That number is far below Wilson's claimed 740,000 and roughly matches the 175,000 figure cited in Hollis. So even on Wilson's own terms, there are no new facts warranting departure from Hollis. Finally, even if Hollis's number were accurate, those figures would hardly alter Hollis's outcome. Hollis understood Heller to identify machine guns as the quintessential example of unprotected arms and to treat M16s are dangerous and unusual weapons. And while recognizing... And while recognizing this as dicta, Hollis emphasized that we are generally bound by Supreme Court dicta, especially when it is recent and detailed. Thus, even apart from its independent inquiry into common use, Hollis had already anchored its holding in binding Supreme Court guidance. In short, Wilson's updated statistics give us no license to disturb Hollis' unambiguous holding. Machine guns are not protected by the Second Amendment.
Now we're going to get into, because you got to remember, Hollis was before
Bruen.
Bruen, yeah.
A Second Amendment, second argument for ignoring Hollis rests on the claim that it was abrogated by the New York State Pistol and Rifle Association versus Bruen. Unlike a change in facts, an intervening Supreme Court decision may permit one panel to depart from another, but only where such overruling is unequivocally directed by controlling Supreme Court precedent. As already discussed, Hollis held that machine guns are not covered by the, I'm assuming, Second Amendment? Second Amendment because they are dangerous and unusual, and therefore not in common use. Nothing in Bruen unequivocally overrules that core holding.
I mean, well, they're not saying that there isn't anything in Bruen that overrules that core holding. They're saying that there is nothing that is so blatantly obvious that it can't be argued either way.
On the contrary, Bruen reinforces the portion of Heller on which Hollis is relied. In Hollis, the court cited dicta from Heller for proposition that the Second Amendment does not protect dangerous and unusual weapons, and in Bruen, the Supreme Court reiterated that portion of Heller, observing that it is fairly supported by the historical tradition of prohibiting the carrying of dangerous and unusual weapons, that the Second Amendment protects the possession and use of weapons that are in common use at the time. Far from abrogating Hollis, Bruen confirmed its major premise that prohibitions on dangerous and unusual weapons are consistent with our historical tradition of firearm regulation. And because Bruen said nothing about the scope of that tradition, it did not replace Hollis's minor premise, 922.0, is consistent with historical tradition. To be sure, Bruen modified the framework for analyzing Second Amendment challenges. Prior to Bruen, we employed a two-step inquiry. First, whether the law impinged upon the right protected by the Second Amendment, and second, if so, whether the law survived means-end scrutiny. Bruen eliminated that second step, but retained the first as broadly consistent with Heller, which demands a test rooted in the Second Amendment's text as informed by history. Thus, while cases decided under the second step were categorically abrogated by Bruen, that does not mean that Bruen swept the entire slate clean. Rather, if a case decided under the first step does not conflict with Bruen in more concrete way, we cannot say that it was unequivocally rejected by Bruen. That conclusion is also consistent with our decision, United States v. Diaz. True, Diaz stated that our court's pre-Bruen precedent was obsolete under the new historical paradigm for analyzing Second Amendment claims, but Diaz swept away only those cases that relied on means-end scrutiny. Indeed, when the government tried to salvage certain precedents by labeling them Step 1 cases, Diaz rejected the attempt not because Bruen had wiped clean the entire universe of Second Amendment case law, but because those specific precedents were based on means-end scrutiny that Bruen renounced. Not so with Hollis. Hollis was decided exclusively at Step 1, the step Bruen found broadly consistent with Heller, relying directly on Heller's historical analysis. Hollis explained that the law that regulates a class of weapons that are not in common use will be upheld at Step 1. Hollis never invoked, let alone relied on, the now discarded means-end scrutiny. It rested on Heller's dangerous and unusual weapons language, which Bruen reaffirmed. Therefore, overruling Hollis is not unequivocally directed by Bruen. The Sixth Circuit agrees, facing a similar challenge, that a court recently reaffirmed its precedent upholding 922.0 under Heller's holding that Bruen did nothing to displace those aspects of Heller on which its precedent relied. So here, Bruen leaves Hollis intact. In sum, Hollis continues to bind us, and because Hollis controls Wilson's Second Amendment challenge on his 922.0 conviction, must fail. Wilson next argues that the district court applied the wrong cross-reference in calculating.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about this.
Okay.
This is that's basically the he's going to go into arguing the rest of the PSR.
Gotcha.
But they affirm the district conclusion, but they do say that, that he should ask for an en banc.
Wah, wah, wah.
I love it when Flying is reading it like a fairy tale. Our European viewer there, one of our European viewers. We have a couple. When I say a couple, I mean...
And a couple of people asked for the TLDR.
The TLDR is that the machine gun ban was upheld because they could not overturn it, but they're not going to do a Bruen analysis on it. And if the caveat is that if that he should seek an en banc if he wants a true Bruen analysis on the constitutionality of the law.
Because the Fifth Circuit already held Hollis to be valid.
Yes. So they're saying we can't overturn it if we even wanted to. So that's the caveat. Caveat is the en banc could overturn it, and he has every right to en banc, but they're not going to actually go into it.
So, I mean, what would the methodology be if it went en banc and they went to overturn it? Because it sounds like Bruen is not saying that machine guns are protected by the Second Amendment. It seems to refer to dangerous and unusual in Heller.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't think the Fifth Circuit en banc would overturn the machine gun ban. I think that they should.
Right.
But I don't think that they will.
So, all right, and now here's the thing that I'm not sure. I thought basically transferable machine guns were frozen in 1986. That number will not increase. You can do a post sample, but it's not transferable.
Yeah, you can do a post sample, not transferable, but the numbers that they used and the current ATF numbers are different. And you might be wondering, well, how does that happen? We have better numbers, better bookkeeping.
Okay.
Because back when Hollis was decided, everything was paper. So.
Well, and there is one exception because a saw got the tax stamp mistaken.
Yeah, but that was pulled back though.
They clawed that back?
They clawed that back a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
It was approved, but it was clawed back fairly quickly. Like within like a couple days, but a lot of people don't realize it.
What do we got here?
Mr. Paramedic, thank you. Why is it that we have to play mental gymnastics on a clear part of the Bill of Rights, notwithstanding the constitutional precedent says all laws are repugnant or void? Madison versus Mulberry, by the way, good pull there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very, very old case. Because Madison in that case is James Madison. But we are letting the courts create law. Are they common? Who cares?
So, excellent point. The problem here is I think all of us agree, if you're watching this video, you're agreeing or in agreement that the Second Amendment is a directive to the federal government that you cannot regulate these things. And that's how I read it, and I think that's how most common people read it, because the first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights, and they're the rights of the people. And they're telling the federal government, hands off, don't mess with this. And with that, there was no asterisk. It doesn't say dangerous and unusual anywhere. I think it's unfortunate that dangerous and unusual is in Heller, and that somehow I didn't read it that way, but I'm sure somebody brighter than me read it that way, that Bruen references dangerous and unusual. Is that in the dicta, or where is that?
Yeah, it's in the dicta.
Okay. So it's
basically they said nothing in this case overrules Heller. It's just it affirms Heller.
Okay.
It clarifies Heller.
Because I was hoping that Bruen would be unpacking more and more rights as time went on and cases went through courts, and that it would finally become, machine guns were legal like they were pre-1986.
That's going to be a huge fight. I know no one wants to hear it, but that is going to be a huge reach for the Supreme Court. Because I don't think the Supreme Court has any intention, unfortunately, of ruling that part of the NFA unconstitutional and the Hughes Amendment unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they should, but outside like one, maybe two justices, There's no chance of that happening.
Now,
Thomas, I could see doing an Alito maybe, but the rest. No.
So before we go, I saw Mr. Guns and Gear had a story about Virginia earlier today, and that Virginia was talking about applying a $500 suppressor tax.
Yeah, we did a video on that like a week and a half ago.
Oh, okay.
Oh wait, you weren't here. It was Dark and I.
Wonderful, Virginia.
Thank you for the other super chat, Mr. Paramedic, and thank you for your service being a paramedic.
So this is highly disappointing.
It's highly disappointing, but honestly, it's not unexpected.
Not unexpected. It did kind of leave the door open, but I don't expect that to change.
Yeah, it did leave the door open. I think the whole NFA is unconstitutional because of the Murdoch versus Pennsylvania. Yeah, I don't think the suppressor thing in Virginia is gonna go through though.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. Hope I'm right, but I don't. I think that's one of the ones that they're gonna give up on.
Virginia got what they voted for.
Unfortunately.
How did they not get Winsome Sears? That is the most amazing thing to me. She is wonderfully qualified.
Mm-hmm. But let me just state that we will be fighting, and on Monday will be lobby day at the Capitol. If you can make it, please get down to Richmond, to the Richmond Capitol for VCDL lobby day.
Say hi to Dark.
There's going to be a ton of people there. It's going to be a good. It is always a fun time and a great time, and it's going to be very, very good. You show up in force
and in kit.
Yeah. Show up however you want. I'm not going to tell you how to show up, but I think it's going to be very important for a big turnout. Unfortunately, I got a scheduling conflict, so I would not be there.
Be on the other coast, basically.
Yeah, be on the other coast for a couple weeks. Well, I'll be back on the East Coast for a couple days, then back on the West Coast.
Ping pong.
Yeah, a lot of freaking flyer mileage.
Did you say freaking?
Frequent flyer mileage, but yeah, we're gonna get out of here. I don't think we're gonna do a show today. I have 4 deadlines I'm on. So,
well, okay then.
I'll be writing for the next hours. We all know machine guns aren't coming off the NFA, but what about an even more unconstitutional Hughes Amendment? I don't think they're going to touch anything with machine guns. Hughes Amendment is definitely unconstitutional in my opinion, but I just don't see them touching anything with machine guns. It's like radioactive.
Mm-hmm.
To SCOTUS. Yeah. But we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to go get to writing and get a bunch of stuff up.
Oh, I never meant to wear this shirt in public.
What shirt is that? Is that Silencer Shop? What's wrong with Silencer Shop?
Oh, wait, Silencer Shop is okay?
Silencer Shop is the one that's suing the ATF.
It's Central. All right.
The Silencer Shop versus ATF is going through the courts right now with GOA to remove suppressors, SBRs, SBSs, and AOWs from the NFA. They're the good guys.
It's Central. I got to keep that in my mind.
Yeah. So there you go. I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, don't throw them under the bus. Silencer Shop. Dave Malloy, who's the owner of Silencer Shop, is doing everything he can to dismantle the NFA. So there you go.
Well, cool.
Rich only wears free shirts
because I have so many.
I like most of my free shirts are donated, even though I'm wearing a free shirt right now. and it's a company that everyone should support.
Oh, you're wearing your JSD shirt?
JSD Supply. So there you go. All right, guys. I think on Wednesday at 1, I am doing a meet and greet next week at the JSD Supply booth.
Wednesday at 1? Oh, next week. Not tomorrow.
Yeah, next week. But we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching. And yeah, that's it.